What I've learned in my time in banking is that there is so much money out there. It's just a question of whether you're in the arena where the money is circulating or you're not. I know people who sell windows and make over £30 million revenue a year. There are hundreds of ways you can make money. It's just a question of whether you are operating at the top of that field or not. If you're at the bottom, understandably, you're not going to be seeing those returns that the people at the top are. So the question to ask yourself is, too many people are literally letting opportunities go because all it serves is that middle purpose. They want to go from A right to the end and think, I need to be a millionaire next year. So when you're sitting there saying, I don't want to be rich when I'm 60, I don't want to be rich when I'm 70. Well, okay, don't try and get rich in a year either because you'll probably lose your money. So yeah, I get you don't want to be rich when you're old, you want it now, but can you sustain it? If you focus on the small things, it adds up to the big things. People are focused on the big things without understanding what makes up the big things. And so they never get there. When people say to me that money will never change me, that's an absolute lie. Money doesn't change you if you've not made enough of it. Money will change you. I think for me, rather than people focusing on wealth as a theme, focus on
you're not defined by where you come from.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big message that I always want to tell people.
Like you have to be able to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
When you grow up in ends, you don't realize it when you're confident, but you have an audacity to do things that ordinarily most people wouldn't be willing to do.
Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. We got a special guest in the building. We got Franklin Asante, who is a private banker at Coutts for over 16 years. Franklin, how are you doing today?
Very good. Thanks for having me.
Welcome. I've been looking forward to this conversation. I think I've been following you for a while. You post really, really great content on, personal finance. And I've also listened to your book, which we'll talk a little bit about. And I think it was a very great, you can see how thick it is. It's very in depth. So,
big body of work.
Yeah, very, very good body of work. And it covers every aspect, which I think a lot of personal finance books don't cover everything. And it was a very, very good read from end to end. But, before we start, obviously I described you as a private banker. Who is Franklin?
Look, Franklin is a normal guy from Northwest London, someone who was ambitious as a child, fearless, and willing to try things, willing to explore, willing to be the odd one out if it meant that I could progress, and, apply myself to things that maybe people in my immediate surroundings probably didn't take the time to do. So yeah, I think I've always been wired that way. Maybe, early from my upbringing, kind of being empowered to believe that I could be whatever I wanted to be. I think that's really powerful. Words are powerful, and I think things that are spoken to you can really have a massive impact and influence on, who you go on to become. But yeah, look, other than that, finance has become my sort of subject matter. But otherwise, I'm just a normal guy from Northwest London.
Yeah, love that. And I love the fact that you said that you spoke words into existence. I think that's very important. That's technically manifestation, right? In a way. And I think I remember actually in the early chapters, you kind of mentioned that in the book, right?
Yeah.
As part of goals,
Yeah, 100%. I think I was very keen on, the whole idea of being able to visualize what it is you're going after. It makes the journey so much easier when you know why you're on that path. So yeah, I think manifestation, speaking things to existence, very important aspects.
If you're anything like me, you want to grow your money in an automated, low cost and tax-free way. One of the best platforms out there is Trading 212, who are kindly sponsoring this episode. And I'm currently using Trading 212 to build my wealth tax-free by investing my money through a stocks and shares ISA. Why I think Trading 212 is so amazing is that you can start investing with as little as £1 and you have over 13,000 stocks and ETF options to choose from. Trading 212 also pay you a market-leading 5.2% interest per annum on any cash that is uninvested on a daily basis. And when you do invest, there's no commission fee, with only a small 0.15% FX fee where applicable. Even better, you can set and forget your investments by taking advantage of Trading 212's auto invest feature, where you choose what you want to invest into automatically every month. Setting up a Trading 212 account only takes a few steps, and if you click the link of the description of this episode, you'll get a free fractional share worth up to £100. It's free money, so you might as well take advantage of it. I'm not a financial advisor, so please always do your own research before investing. Okay, so let's talk about your story. If it wasn't obvious, where are your parents from?
So I'm Ghanaian. I mean,
Yeah.
I think with a name like Asante, you can't really hide.
Yeah.
I'm Ghanaian. Both parents Ghanaian. Raised by my grandmother, however, because both my parents were sort of busy working. But I think that gave me, a lot of, as I mentioned before, that belief in terms of, who I could be and what I could become.
Yeah.
I think, if you're fortunate to have grandparents around you, they're always so much more deliberate with you in terms of, how they speak things to you. Parents, I can imagine, I haven't got children yet, but I've got lots of people around me who are parents, and I can see how busy they are in comparison to maybe their parents who have a bit more time to nurture, their kids. And so maybe I was very fortunate in that sense that I was really nurtured by my grandmother, who I mentioned in the book, and actually dedicate the book to her because, she told me at one point that apparently I said to her that one day I'll tell my story. And I think she kind of gave me that belief that I had a story to tell. Okay. And so I think I've lived my whole life writing the chapters in order to tell the story.
Love that.
Yeah.
Amazing. So were you born Ghana?
Yes.
Here?
Yeah. I was born in Ghana,
Nice.
but then I was raised here. As I said, Northwest London, Harlesden, Willesden, Stonebridge, Wembley.
Yeah.
When you're in Northwest London, all those areas feel like, your back garden because they're so translatable. You can sort of roam around. But I went to school in Willesden, initially primary school in Kingsbury, then Willesden. And then I stayed in that area pretty much for, my teenage years.
What was it like growing up, obviously, in that part of Northwest London?
Look, I think growing up in that part of Northwest London definitely opened my eyes to a lot of things. It wasn't easy by any stretch of imagination, but actually what it did is it instilled me with a lot of principles. I think, sometimes we forget how well-mannered and well-principled people who come from, sort of underrepresented backgrounds can be. I now operate in very different circles, and I kind of see, not everyone is as moral as you would think. When money's involved, it's all about the chase. Whereas actually, when you've got fewer resources, you really value things that you have. And, when the local guy down the road whose trainers are always fresh, but it's the same pair of trainers, but even just the way he looks after that pair of trainers or their Avirex jacket or their jeans or that pride they take in what they have, I think it's something that definitely rubbed off on me. So, I didn't have much, but the things I did have, I made sure that I took care of it. Yeah. Whether it was my BMX bike, whether it was my, Air Forces trainers or whatever it was, but I took a lot of pride in that. And that stays with you as you climb the ladder, as it were. So, when you buy a house, when you buy a car, when you've got money to make meaningful moves with, you still remember the value of things. And so, look, it was challenging because it's an area that had a lot of complications. And I think it was easy to fall into the wrong crowd. But as I said at the start, I think I was always wired in a way that, I was around those things, but I always wanted more for myself. And so I always knew that, listen, whatever's around me isn't the end or isn't all that I can ever be exposed to. I'm going to put myself out there and try and find experiences, find opportunities that allows me to experience more than what's around me. Yeah.
And it's I mean, you did that, right? You end up doing it. It's crazy thinking.
100%. But you know what? If I'm honest with you, sometimes it's about, again, having that belief. Because I'll be honest, I didn't know where the end result was. Okay. Right? Yeah. When I was growing up, I didn't know that being a private banker was an option. I didn't know that private bankers existed, right? But I always knew I wanted more. And I think that's, an important message, really, that sometimes the end goal may not be crystal clear, but actually, the desire of what you're trying to achieve. It's something that sometimes it's intangible and it's hard to describe, that I want opportunities for myself, but I also want to be in a place where I can offer opportunities to others. Yeah. What does that look like? I couldn't tell you when I was 12 or 13, but I applied myself to every opportunity that came, took opportunities and made sure that I was developing myself, and gradually I was starting to live out this thing that I wanted to achieve. And, here I am today, able to write a book and to be able to give back to people. So I think it's just about really having the vision. It doesn't have to be crystal clear, but knowing what you want it to feel and taste like and starting to take the steps towards it. Yeah.
So your route to becoming a private banker, how did that come about?
Very unconventional. Very unconventional. Maybe my entire story is unconventional. Because, my sort of upbringing and studies, I enjoy drama, English, literature, and that's what I studied even at university. But it was 2008 is when I got into private banking, and that was the year of the financial crisis. If I'm honest with you, you couldn't really be picky in 2008 in terms of where you worked. I just saw that people who were graduating before me were not finding jobs. And, you know, I kind of took myself aside for a moment and thought, hang on, if these people who are graduating with masters and all types of degrees can't find jobs and end up back up in retail, what are the odds that when I graduate, I'm going to find a job that I want? So I started looking, just pretty much just searching around, trying to find, you know, a respectable job. And I landed on banking. The only reason why I landed on banking is because when I was at school, the only one person who had a job that wasn't in retail that I always thought, wow, how did he manage that? Was a guy, I don't even know where he is these days, but a guy called Mario. Mario, if you're out there somewhere, and he worked in a bank, in a retail bank.
Okay.
And so I was like, wow, you know. So I remember that day when I was at home looking for jobs, I thought, I wonder if I could get into banking. Literally, that was it. So there wasn't, you know, any encouragement or any kind of links or anything like that. It was purely me thinking, I wonder what I could possibly achieve if I kind of put myself to it. And so I applied, and I got in at a very clerical grade. And that's the second part, you know, just because you enter a field doesn't mean you're necessarily going to climb the ladder and excel. That bit is about how you apply yourself. The application is very important once you're in. So I was there at a very clerical grade. There was no graduate schemes or internships or anything like that. And I could have said, right, I'm in, I'm going to relax. But I thought, nah, I'm in, I'm going to work right to the top.
Yeah.
You know, I was young, I was energetic. I didn't have any weight of any, you know, responsibilities. I didn't have children. At the time, I didn't have a mortgage. I had nothing to hold me down from giving the best of myself to the environment, the new environment I found myself in. So for me, it was a perfect storm because here was this kid from Northwest London, never expected to be anywhere near this industry, ending up in this industry. And to me, it felt like a new birth. It was like, wow, I'm going to embrace absolutely everything there is about this because I've made it enough by just being here. So how much further could I go?
Yeah, it's so interesting. Like, and it's crazy what you can achieve when you are driven. You've got, like you said, not the complete vision, but you've got some sort of a vision to get into there. And you also joined at a time where it was quite, you know, frantic. What was that like for you joining at a time where like the world is technically on fire? It
was turbulent, and I write it in the book. You know, that's the first chapter when I describe. You know, I describe it like a house on fire, and you're walking with your best suit, and you're kind of oblivious to what's going on around you. But it was the best learning curve. You know, I mean, to be entering a market at a downturn means that you're there for the ride when things come back. So you really learn to understand people's fears and anxieties around money, you know, when times are bad, right? And then you know how to then adapt and work with them on the recovery. So it was a very important part, you know, part of my journey to actually have started in that, which is why I say, look, I think my entire story is unconventional because, you know, a lot of people may go into banking during a normal economic cycle. There's nothing much to talk about. I got in during 2008. And if your listeners are old enough to remember what it was like working in 2008, people were turning up to the office and they had to pack their bags and put everything they own in a box and walk out. You know, people were losing their jobs left, right, center. This was a global thing. So yeah, I mean, what a time.
Yeah, and you've been through two now, 2008, 2020 now as well. Yeah,
but you know what? I've always maintained that for me, if you look at 2020 compared to 2008, they're not even comparable in a sense. 2020 was something that we didn't control. No one was pointing fingers, you know, of course, unless, you know, some people in America pointing fingers at certain countries, but nobody in the city was pointing fingers. Yeah. Whereas what happened after 2008 was a genuine dislike for bankers and people in financial institutions. So, you know, a bit of a running joke, but for a while, I wouldn't say to people I worked in banking, I'm in finance. You know, that was kind of as loose as I would go because there was a narrative that was woven around bankers are greedy, bankers caused the financial crisis, bankers have made you lose your pension. It was pretty much bankers followed by anything negative. So there was a real kind of, you know, kind of scent in the air around what bankers had caused. Whereas 2020, we were kind of all in it together. It was kind of something that happened to us rather than any activity or actions that individuals had taken to bring down an industry.
Yeah, that's wow. Yeah. I do remember that you just kind of reminded me of that narrative of bankers. Nobody talks about that anymore.
No, they don't. No, it's kind of gone under the radar slightly. Yeah. But yeah, as a point, it was pretty tense to be a banker in the scene.
Oh gosh. Okay, so you rose up the ranks to, you know, head of entrepreneurs at
Yep.
Coutts, right? What does that role entail?
So the entrepreneur proposition, so it's about looking after our clients who are in business. So entrepreneurs, business owners up and down the country. The proposition role is really understanding how we engage with those clients that we've got, but also how we find more.
Yeah.
So, my whole world now revolves around business. And so whether it's, individuals looking to grow and scale their business, individuals looking to sell their business, and also what they do with life after they sell their business. That's a whole nother conversation around enterprise and business that, a lot of people don't consider if you're not in business, but there's a whole challenge around building a successful business and then how you manage your personal finances alongside that,
Yeah.
either during or after you selling your business. So the proposition is really just trying to figure out what we do to find more, engage with them, and help them on that journey. Because any entrepreneur watching this will tell you that, being in business is tough.
Very tough.
And if there's one thing that, advisors or professionals can take off your shoulders, it's around that financial element of helping you to manage what you've made, and to preserve, what all your hard work has produced.
Yeah, which is another key thing that you talk about in your book, and we're going to talk about the importance of having a team. I really like that section because I feel like with personal finance, nobody ever really talks about that.
Yeah.
Oh, you need to have a team of accountants, financial advisors. Nobody ever really talks about that kind of area. It's kind of assumed that we should just self-manage to whatever our goal is.
Yeah, again, and that might be just the UK mentality, if I'm honest with you. Because, when you think about Americans, and that's, probably an easy comparison, but Americans do everything for show. When they walk in a room, you see the entire entourage of accountants and lawyers, and they are proud to show off their team, because there's almost a perception that when you've got professionals around you, your sort of position in society goes up a few notches. That people are, oh wow, look, do you know who their lawyers are? Do you know who their accountants are? Oh wow, okay, back off. That's a serious person. Us Brits are a bit more conservative. It's kind of like, oh, hush, hush. I don't want to tell anybody who we're a bank. I don't want to tell anybody who my accountants are. I don't want to tell anybody who my lawyers are.
Yeah.
So it's inherent in us, unfortunately, that we try and do everything on our own in our little corner, and don't really speak about these things. But why wouldn't you want to surround yourself with a team that can help you to achieve your goals?
Exactly. So in your time in banking, what are like some of the key lessons that you've like learned about money?
I've learned so much about money. I mean, to the point where sometimes you feel a little detached from money itself, because you realize that all it is an enabler. And a lot of people are kind of fighting and dying for it. And you get to a stage where you just figure out, oh, it just allows you to move this from here to there. And, a lot of people talk about financial freedom, and I'm now stressing that I don't think there is such thing as a financial freedom. It's just financial choices. The more money you have, the more choices you have. But the more choices you have, the more headache that also brings, right? So it's about choice. But if you have £1 billion in your account, yes, you're free and you can choose things, but you've got so much more choices to make to manage and maintain it. That doesn't make you free. You still have to pick up your phone and talk to your bankers and your accountants and your advisors and make decisions. They're going to need you to respond to them to know where to deploy that capital. So there's always work to do, right? But what I've learned in my time in banking is that there is so much money out there, right? Despite what anyone tells you, there is so much money out there in circulation. It's just a question of whether you're in the arena where the money is circulating or you're not.
Yeah.
And when you're not, it may feel very, very dry, and it may feel as if there isn't enough out there. What I've also learned is that you can make money in so many different ways. It isn't just the things we see on TV. It isn't just being an entertainer or a sports person, a musician, or even recruitment or property or retail or hotel. It's all of them, right? So there are so many avenues that people make a lot of money. And so I really encourage people not to limit their thinking into assuming that because the loudest people in the room come from particular sectors, those are the only viable options. I wish when I was growing up, I knew that I could be more than just what I saw on TV.
Yeah.
That there are so many people making money that you never hear about, and that for me was a real shock. I thought, wow, like I thought if you were on TV, then that was it. But actually, no. I mean, there are, you name it, accountants, lawyers, doctors, pilots, solicitors, bankers, you name it. There are people out there making very, very good money. And so that was a big realization for me when I figured out, okay, do you know what? There is more than one ways to skin a cat. And actually, if you want to make money, there are hundreds of ways you can make money.
Yeah.
It's just about a question of whether you are operating at the top of that field or not. Because if you're not, anyone could tell you, don't bother with that. You're not going to make any money from it.
That's a good point. Yeah. That's a very, very, you're right. No, you're right. So wait, so with that, that's like thinking about the 1% in your industry or your field, technically.
Yeah,
like.
but even that, so I wouldn't even kind of, relegate it just to the 1%, because again, that's what causes that sort of, sensationalizing of thinking you're either here or you're there.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people in the middle making very good money too, right? There's a lot of people
That's
who are
true, yeah.
in between the 1% and the 90% who are also living really well. So, like I said, it's just understanding where you're operating on that scale.
Yeah.
If you're at the bottom, understandably, you're not going to be seeing those returns that the people at the top are. So the question to ask yourself is, do you have the capabilities and the resources to move up that scale? If not, is there another field where you have a better chance of moving up that scale? Because if you can get to the top tier of any scale, you're going to earn well, whatever industry you're in. You know, I know people who sell windows and make over £30 million revenue a year, right?
That's wild.
Windows. And I think, I'm in the wrong job. But it just tells you any industry that you apply yourself to, if you're good at what you do, you can earn well.
Yeah. I love that. I love the fact that you said that and you use Windows as an example, because a lot of
But
people
nobody
be
thinks
like,
about that, right? I mean,
Yeah.
look, everyone's always chasing after the sexy new tech
Yeah.
whiz, social media based businesses. Okay. But there are some boring services that we all need.
We
Right?
all need Windows.
We all
that's
need
for sure.
Windows.
Yeah.
Right. So whose job is to fulfill that if everyone else is busy trying to chase the next Facebook?
Yeah.
Right.
That's true.
So don't neglect the boring businesses.
Yeah. Wow. So what like principles around money should we all kind of abide by? Obviously, working a lot with it, speaking to clients and things like that.
I mean, the main principle for me is discipline.
Okay.
And when I say discipline, it's about your attitude towards how you see money. I think a lot of us were raised in environments where we were made to think and feel as if, money is scarce, and it was. And therefore, we were never really trained to exercise our ability to grow it or to explore what we could do with money. It was a case of do this, earn that, put it under your bed, and that's it. Don't talk about it again. The discipline is really being able to understand what your current behaviors and patterns are with your money. Same way that people go to therapy to understand what issues they're facing in life and what blockers they have. We all have personal relationship with money. And I think it's very important to understand that. If you know you're somebody who is risk averse, then how do you explore the options of growing your money in a safe way?
Yeah.
If you're someone who takes too much risk, well, how do you de-risk a little to make sure that you're not putting your money at too much risk all the time? So it's understanding who you are when it comes to money.
Yeah.
When people say to me that money will never change me, that's an absolute lie. If money doesn't change you, you've not made enough of it.
Okay.
Money will change you. Right?
Interesting.
And this is what comes back to your relationship with money. So the discipline of knowing, how do I behave when I see money? How do I behave when I'm spending money? How do I feel when I'm spending? Because some people cringe when they're spending money because they don't want to spend money, right? Some people get a thrill when they spend money. So you have to understand and analyze those behaviors. So once you know what your behavior is towards money, then it's about understanding, okay, well, what do I need to do to build a healthy relationship with how I interact with money? And so being disciplined is all around managing, okay, what you earn, what you spend, what you then do with your disposable income. Those are the principles. It doesn't need to be overcomplicated, quite frankly. A lot of people want to go from 0 to 100, i.e., what's the quickest way I can make £1 million today? Look, if there was a quick answer to that, do you not think everybody would be doing it? Right?
Exactly.
Fine. So what's the substitute? The substitute is take a real long, hard look at yourself where you are right now. How much are you earning? Does that cover what you needed to cover? If not, how do you increase your income? Does that mean adding more skills to what you can do? Does that mean finding a new environment, a new job? What does it mean right now for me to be able to go from A to B? I'm far more interested in that than people trying to get from A to Z. Because if you can get from A to B successfully, then you might be able to move on to C, then D, then E. And there's a ripple effects, right? But I think too many people are literally letting opportunities go because all it serves is that middle purpose. They want to go from A right to the end and think, I need to be a millionaire
Yeah.
next year.
Yeah, that's
Right.
everybody. That is literally everybody. And we're gonna talk about that because, you know, I've done a few episodes where we talked about investing, and I think that sometimes you get comments from people where it's like, I don't want to be wealthy when I'm old and stuff like that. And we're gonna talk a little bit about it, but that's is always the
Being
consensus,
wealthy is
right?
not a dirty word.
Right.
It's not a dirty word.
Okay, so in terms of obviously your page, right?
Mm.
What was that motivation for creating that, wanting to share, you know, your knowledge?
Yeah, so when it comes to the Urban Financier page, you know, I remember at one stage of my career thinking to myself that I was very fortunate to now be in a position where I was exposed to information and conversations about money and wealth that I knew my younger self had no business to even know about. But I also knew that my friends and family and people around me at that time still didn't have access to. So I thought, well, I could either keep this all to myself, or I could be the voice for the people and actually be able to show a perspective that says, guys, listen, there is more to life than what we might be able to see in our immediate surroundings. So that was pretty much the basis of it. It wasn't intended to sell people things or push narratives at people. And if you've interacted with my page, it's about knowledge. But I'm very particular in terms of giving you the knowledge, but you apply the medicine as you see fit. Right? Because I think there are too many people who are, you have to only buy this, you have to only do this, you have to pay off your mortgage, you have to. And it's like, well, guys, listen, if you're an advisor, you know that it's almost impossible to give holistic advice to everybody at once. It doesn't work, right? You have to sit down on a one-to-one basis to understand someone's entire story before you can recommend a solution.
Yeah.
So in the absence of that, you can't be trying to address everyone's problems in one go. But what you can do is give people a perspective of actually, did you know this about capital gains tax? Did you know these about some of these efficient ways of investing money? Or, you know, it's just, oh, actually, now you sparked an interest.
Yeah.
What I want my followers to do is to have that interest, go and research, go and talk to professionals, go and find somebody that can help them execute it.
Yeah.
So that was pretty much the basis of my page.
Cool. And it's a great page. Long may it continue. And
Thank you.
obviously it's involved into a book as well. So one of the things that we talked about offline, right, was building wealth. And, you know, building wealth is definitely like very popular. It's a lot, what a lot of people want to, you know, kind of do, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, they want to build wealth into the millions or want to become a millionaire. I think that's aspiration for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But what does it really take to build, you know, significant wealth, and what is that process to doing that?
Yeah, good question. So look, I think it's possible for anybody to work their way to becoming a millionaire. But is it probable? Less so. Because there are so many things that need to be true in order for you to get there. Some of it is luck, right? And luck isn't spoken about enough. But again, it goes back to your discipline. I think for me, rather than people focusing on wealth as a theme, focus on your income, right? Focus on having a positive cash flow. Focus on accumulating assets that grow over time. If you focus on the small things, it adds up to the big things. People are focused on the big things without understanding what makes up the big things. And so they never get there because it's kind of, they're dreaming straight to the end without building the steps. So like I said, I think, you know, this whole wealth thing, and I get it, you know, there are various buzzwords that sort of become flavor of the month or flavor of the century, but this wealth thing seems to have stuck around for a while because, you know, I think wherever platform you go on, you'll hear someone talking about build wealth, create wealth, you know, become self-made, become financially free, da, 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 da. Look, great conversations. If people take nothing else away from this discussion, all I want you to understand is focus on your income. Are you earning enough? If not, how do you earn more? And once you earn more, what do you do with that surplus income? Are you putting it in the right places? Is it growing for you? Is it beating inflation? Is it going to be there to support your cost of living when you're older? Simple questions, right? If that leads to wealth, great. But if it doesn't, at least you've answered questions. That means you can survive the next 30, 40, 50 years of your life, right?
Interesting. Very, very interesting. I like that perspective of income, focusing on your
Focus
income.
on your income. Because listen, income is what you use to build assets.
Yeah.
The assets will then take care of you.
That's true.
If you've bought the right assets.
Yeah.
But without the income, where are you getting the assets from?
That's true. Yeah. But then people would say, well, okay, but how do I make more income, right? If I'm not if I don't have no skills, if I'm not in the best job, you know, how do I do that?
Sure. So that's where we go back to the comment I made about,
Yeah.
okay, how do you
Mm.
give yourself the best chance of earning more income? So
Yeah.
if you're in a job where there is a glass ceiling or a narrow opportunity for you to earn any more,
Yeah.
then okay, what other skills do you need to then go and find in order to be able to pivot and move somewhere else where there might be a better opportunity for you to earn more?
Yeah.
That's why also there's a huge popularity around side hustles, starting businesses, being an enterprise, because I think the truth is for a lot of people, they understand that earning a salary might pay the bills, but it's not going to make you rich,
Yeah.
right? And that's not to say that there aren't salaried people earning millions a year. There are. But again, it goes back to that scale. Where are you on that scale? If you're at the bottom, it's unlikely that your salary alone is going to make you rich. If you're at the top, very likely. Yeah, there's some people who earn 7-8 figures a year from salaries, roles, plus bonuses and things like that.
Yeah.
So if you find yourself in that space where you think, okay, I don't have the ability to earn any more money, what do I do? Well, this puzzle for you to solve is, well, how do you put yourself in a place where you can earn more money?
Yeah.
So is it finding new skills? If not, is there an enterprise or a venture or something you can do that can open that door for you? You can't sit still, right?
Yeah.
You can't sit still and just hope to become a millionaire, right? There's got to be some action that you have to take. The first part of that is self-assessing that I've hit a ceiling with my income.
Okay. Look, great information. I love it. And I love the focus on income because, again, I think a lot of people think of the investing part,
Yep.
which I do. I talk a lot about on the podcast, and I like to talk about that. And again, I think we'll talk a little bit about that because obviously that's investing your surplus where possible. I wanted to know from you, right? Obviously, working with your clients in terms of getting that understanding of accumulating their wealth, right? Was it through things like investing? Was it like business? Was it careers? Obviously, I know that's a broad question.
Yeah.
But just trying to get a bit of an understanding of what that was.
Yeah, I think when it comes to accumulating wealth, a lot of it does tend to come from assets.
Okay.
And that's why, again, I put so much emphasis on your income to start with, because you need some income to acquire assets. For some people, they use enterprise. So they start a business and they ultimately get a capital event. Now, whether you're in business or you're in employment, trying to find a capital event is very important, because the truth is that is how a lot of people who have money go on to make money, by a capital event. And by capital event, I mean being able to receive a lump sum that is greater than, let's say, your yearly salary in one hit, which you can then go and deploy into other assets or other activities that then multiplies that money. So what do you need to do in order to do that? Legally, by the way. Right. Let's just
everything's
add-
legal.
just
We
add
don't
that
talk
in there,
about no
right?
illegal things on the podcast.
So, I know a lot of people who, again, if you're in the type of employment where you get commission or bonuses or things like that, who have got a really big bonus and gone to use that to start their own business. And from then on, that business has gone to achieve great success. They've sold that business. They've then taken a few millions off the table. They've now gone back into business, started something else. And before you know it, they're buying property assets. They're buying other businesses.
Yeah.
They've built wealth, right? But it's about that capital event. Where is that capital event going to come from? So again, a bit similar to that income question. What activity are you going to do that's going to bring you a capital event?
Yeah.
Because if you can achieve that, that could be a massive kickstart for you to then really have the ability to go and exploit the options of buying assets that can hopefully grow over time.
Yeah. And capital event, obviously, you mentioned starting your own business and then selling it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Unlikely doing this part, IPOing it. Unlikely.
Look,
if you're very driven.
Yeah, sure. I mean, listen, an IPO is obviously an option of exiting your business.
Yeah.
That is something that is achievable for some people. But, let's think about, capital events closer to home. So like I said, in your job, are there things you can do that can help you accumulate capital events there? If not, do you do a joint venture with a friend or family member to create an asset or something that can help you achieve a capital event? Some people are fortunate they get inheritance, that can be their capital event. Some people just start a business from scratch and hopefully understand that until they achieve that capital event, they're not going to have the resources to build their wealth. And so they focus on saying, how do I get this business to a point where I can either declare a large dividend or I can sell it, get 2-3 million pounds, and that's now going to be the pot of money I use to go and build my wealth.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. I love that. So there's something else in your book that I really liked, and it kind of caught my attention, the physical assets part of it. So you're saying that, you know, some of the clients that you've come across, they have a small portion of, I guess, their net worth in physical assets, so cars,
Yep.
jewelries, watches, things like that, right? Why do you think that is?
Yeah, look, it's no surprise really when you look at stats that show that you know the wealthiest quartile of people in the world have the majority of their assets in financial assets rather than physical. Financial assets grow far quicker than physical ones. But also, a real interesting observation is that a lot of people assume that you buy physical assets to build wealth, you know, and that's a safe bet. You know, I'm going to buy a house, I might flip it, I'll buy some gold, I might hold on to it, I'll buy a car or whatever. How I see it is a reverse, that actually a lot of wealthy people that I'm around buy physical assets last.
Okay.
So they put their money in stocks and shares and companies and financial investments. Once it grows to a certain size, like that example, let's say, so somebody who starts a business, grows it to a certain point, at that stage, they sell it. They've now got £3 million that they've taken out of the business. They pay their tax. Great. Now I'm going to buy some buy-to-lets. Now I might do a little project over here. Now I might go and buy a classic car as an investment. Now I might buy a piece of art as an investment. Whereas a lot of people are starting from the ground up thinking, I need to own a piece of art right now. Do you see what I mean? So
Yeah.
the psychology is different.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm saying focus on your income. Because look, everybody has a lot more options when you've got the resources. So focus on that.
Yeah.
Because if you get to that point where you've done a good job at whatever it is you're doing and you've got those resources, you have so much more options. Now, because of that, things you buy will already be of a value that can help you grow them. Right. And it gives you more options too. So that's the way I see it from an anecdotal perspective, that I see individuals who build up their resources, get to a point, then they acquire all these physical assets. But in the meantime, they've got more in the financial assets that keeps growing.
Yeah.
So it's about understanding that balance.
That's interesting. It's interesting that you said that, because there's going to be a lot of people listening that, and I'm one of them.
Yeah.
I bought my first house. Not that I don't regret it, but I bought my first place like 5 years ago. There's a lot of people who their first aspiration when we're talking about any investment is going to be a home. That's going to be their very first big one.
And look, I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah.
So look, buying your home, I had a recent conversation where I said, I think if there's one thing you should own, it should be your home. So I absolutely agree with that. I just think it's more, I don't think anyone buys their home as a vehicle to build wealth necessarily.
Probably not, no.
Right.
Yeah.
Unless you're a baby boomer, and that's been more, you know, kind of circumstance rather than design, because house prices then were much cheaper. They've all risen now and they've got loads of equity that they can extract to give back to family members. But I don't think any 20, 30-year-old now is thinking my first house is going to be my vehicle to wealth. I'm thinking more about what you do with the other money that you're investing in places, thinking, oh, okay, don't think about buying art right now or classic cars or anything like that. A, because the entry point is probably too high for you anyway. But secondly, you want to get there once you've created enough resources that you can then be strategic about, okay, what can I buy in order to grow this money?
Yeah. So another thing, right, that I think that, you know, the 9 to 5, and I like that you mentioned, and again, I don't want to spoil the book too much. I'm not going to mention the circumstances, but I like the fact that you had an example of somebody who was in a 9 to 5.
Yeah.
And I think that, let me not say glorify, we just don't glorify that it's possible, or you can do things, or you can maneuver that enough to be able to build wealth. And I really, you know, so I guess my question around that is, what do you think, what are your thoughts around, you know, using your 9 to 5? Again, I know you mentioned income to be able to obviously get to your goals.
Yeah, well, look, I think the great thing about having income is your ability to leverage that income, right? Any business owner, self-employed individual watching this will know how tough it is when you try to borrow money as a self-employed individual, right? Because, you know, for tax efficiency, a lot of business owners don't take much income out of their business. But then when you go to get a mortgage, they're like, sorry, your payslip or your tax return doesn't say you earn enough money. And so a lot of salaried people have that instant advantage where actually my salary is black and white. I can go to a bank right now and borrow money against this. Now, what can I do with that money? What can I leverage? What can I go and buy as a result of that? So, you know, I think you're right. It's not encouraged enough because, again, it might just be a UK mindset and mentality. And by the way, this isn't saying go out there and borrow money to your eyeballs. No.
Yes.
It's about understanding the fact that if the tables are turned and you're actually self-employed, it becomes a bit trickier to be able to get access to leverage and money. Whereas a salaried individual absolutely has that chance. So as soon as you start earning a decent wage, rather than blowing it on cars and clothes and, fashionable items, how do you get yourself in a position where you can leverage that income early to buy assets that, like your house, for example? How many early 20-somethings think of that? And if, I have a theory, and it's not proven yet, but it's a suspicion of mine that if you look at a lot of couples in today's age, they're together for convenience more than anything else.
Okay.
And that convenience is
Interesting.
financially driven.
Probably.
Single
Probably, yeah.
incomes are no longer stretching as far as they used to.
Mm.
So the notion of one income earner buying a house on their own, paying the mortgage on their own, looking after the kids on their own, taking family holidays on their own is just no longer realistic for a lot of people. And so I suspect that actually there are a lot of joint applications that that lenders see, because the truth is, trying to buy a home in London where the average house price is just over £500,000 is difficult on a single salary now.
Very, very difficult, and it's almost impossible. It's funny that you say like convenience.
There's to put it as nicely as possible, but
yeah,
I have a suspicion that is driving a lot of people to remain in circumstances that, if they had their option, may not be in.
may not. No, it's. Look, yeah. There's a lot of reasons why people stay in convenience situations. Finance is definitely one.
I
of them.
did preface it by saying it's not proven. I'm just saying that I have a suspicion that could play a major part in this.
Okay, so the side hustle. Let's talk a little bit about side hustles, because, again, I think one of the, let's say, things that, say somebody's not earning that much income, they may think, okay, let me start a side hustle, right? Do you think that is necessary though to be able to build wealth and achieve your financial goals? Is a side hustle necessary?
Well, firstly, let's remove that wealth word again, because, like I said, I think sometimes that clouds people's judgment. But I did actually reach out to my followers a while back to ask people why they entertained the idea of a side hustle. And if I'm honest with you, all the responses were very genuine, as in, to be able to have more disposable income, to be able to provide for their family, or actually just not enjoying the day job and looking elsewhere to find some fulfillment, which is all valid. I think it's all about a risk assessment when it comes to side hustles, right? Because as far as I see it, a side hustle is intended to complement what you do on a day-to-day basis rather than subtract. But unless you've done your risk assessment, what I tend to find is a lot of people burn holes in their pockets because their side hustle starts taking away from their main hustle, i.e. setup costs, running a business that's not profitable, having to self-fund things. And then if you then lose momentum, you might get 12 months down the line and figure that you've made no money and you've spent your salary that you could be using for other things to bring this to life. Now, don't get me wrong. Look, when you start a side hustle, you may not be fortunate to have friends or family to financially back you. So yes, there is an element where you have to bootstrap and do things yourself. But that's why the risk assessment is very important to say, okay, how much is it going to cost me to bring this side hustle dream to life? But also being very true to yourself to understand, is this side hustle intended to actually supplement my income, or is it going to be what replaces my main job? Because if it's just a supplement of income and you just want to earn a few £100 every month to pay for your, TV bills or holiday or clothes here and there, then there's a different way you approach that, just to make sure that you're not diving in too deep in something that's going to be all time consuming. Because what you don't want is to do a mediocre job at your job because you're focused on your side hustle, but that's not bringing in that much money. So I think that risk assessment, look, I'm all for it. I think if somebody has the capacity to be able to work a main job, find a passion for something that they're good at and can monetize on the side, and it doesn't distract them from their main job, you learn so much transferable skills just being out in the market, trading, understanding how to provide a service. Because in business, you're protected by infrastructure. You've got a HR team, you've got, marketing team, you've got operations behind you, you've got everything. When you go out on your own is when you realize, oh, geez, you've got to be all those people in the initial phases, right? So sometimes that can also show you some appreciation that actually maybe this isn't for me.
It's not as easy as it looks.
Right? It's not as easy as it looks. Or sometimes people enjoy that, being able to have more responsibilities than what their day job allows them to do. And that's where I think people can really grow with the side hustle, by understanding that, listen, I can offer more to my business if I understand more about how the world works. But my job doesn't allow me to grow beyond this because maybe it's a very specific role. So like I said, I encourage it if you've done your risk assessment and you know that it's not going to take away more than what it brings you.
Brilliant. So let's say somebody's they've increased their income. They listen to this and say, look, Franklin, Hato, we've increased our income. So now we want to grow our money. What kind of assets should they be looking at? Because there's some assets that are not, let's say, good for growth. They could preserve your money, but it doesn't really help you, grow it.
Yeah. So, I mean, there are lots of options of growing your money. And, that again comes down to the individual's priorities and their objectives, So how long have you got for this money to grow? How much risk are you willing and prepared to take for this money to grow? I think those two questions can help you direct. And in the book, I have a tree, sort of a risk assessment tree that says, where are you on this list? So, is it looking at things like stocks and shares where, pretty steady, you can earn a reasonable return over, sort of medium to long term if you've got that time horizon on your side? Or maybe you've got a bit more appetite for risk and you might want to look at some private equity where you back a business, you join forces, and you invest in a startup. And there are tax incentives attached to that as well in the form of EIS and SEIS where you can claim some of that money back. So that could be a lucrative, route long term if it works. The likelihood is a lot of startup companies don't work.
Yeah, what is it, 9 out of 10?
Yeah, a lot of it don't work.
First 5 years or something like that.
A lot of businesses don't see 5 years. A lot of businesses don't see 3 years. So the chances are that, not everything you're going to put your money into is going to work from that perspective if you've got a high risk tolerance. But again, that's why it's important to understand that. Or maybe you want to go for physical assets because that's all your risk tolerance allows. You want to be able to see and touch your assets. And so I think it's all about understanding, so whenever I'm asked this question, any advisor needs to sit down with that individual and really go down that route map and say, fine, how much of this money can you afford to lose? If none at all at any given point, then that kind of limits where we're going to start this conversation, because that means we're looking at pretty much safe assets, cash-based bonds, that sort of thing, right? Or maybe you can take a bit more risk and say, okay, then we look at stocks and shares. Again, nothing's guaranteed. The thing about investing is every investment carries risk. Otherwise, it's not an investment. And, the first thing that any investment manager will tell you is that your capital is at risk. And so be prepared to lose what you're about to put in here. So there's a whole suite of things, from stocks and shares to bonds to commodities to property to even when you look at property, what are the avenues of entering that market? Is it buying a physical thing, or do you invest in a real estate investment trust that allows you to group funds with other people to be able to buy portions of properties that, means that you might be able to invest in a commercial property as part of a group, whereas you might not be able to afford to invest in a commercial property as an individual. There are so many options that you can use to grow your money. So again, I don't ever want people to assume that there's one way to grow their money.
Multiple,
There is multiple ways of growing your money.
And the funny thing is, people are going to listen to this. Look, Franklin, we don't want to lose no money. Nobody ever wants to lose money. There's not one person that'll tell you.
Of course. I don't think anyone, intentionally goes out their way to lose money.
Of course, yes.
But if they haven't done that risk assessment at the start,
then
the likelihood is they might end up losing some money because they haven't asked. When we look at cryptocurrency, digital assets and things like that, if they haven't done that risk assessment, they're just going to think, oh, everyone is saying this is a good place for my money to be in, so I'm going to put my money there until it's no longer a good place for your money to be in. And you think, oh, well, why did no one tell me? So, also a lot of the time is be careful not just to go around adding together bits of financial advice until you think, right, great, this picture looks like me. Right? Because all you've done is taken different versions of different people's conversations and thought, aha, perfect. That's risky.
Indeed it is. And it's like, I think with investing, what's interesting, what did they say? Only invest what you can afford to lose. I think that rings true, right?
It's a scary statement though, isn't it? That puts a lot of people off investing, period.
That's the problem, right?
But again, so then you have to go down a few weight classes then. If you're jumping in the boxing ring for the first time, are you going to go heavyweight or are you going to start at a lower division?
That's true.
Right? Yeah. Same thing applies when it comes to investing your money. So, of course, if you're jumping in with a heavyweight, your likelihood of being knocked out is very high. So that statement is letting you know that, yes, this investments carry risk. If you haven't got a high risk tolerance, lower down your gauge and kick off with something that actually is low risk, that you can at least get comfortable with. And in the book, I talk about one of the characters who had never invested, but once they started investing, they were having sleepless nights, all this anxiety, because no one tells you the feeling of having cash sat in a bank account and then put it into the markets where it's no longer cash
Very different.
and it's just a graph
Mm.
and the numbers going up and down and you think there's nothing you can do to it anymore.
Mhm.
That anxiety is something people don't talk
Yeah,
about. So
yeah.
it's important to understand, start from where you're comfortable and build from there.
Yeah, very important. And on that note, team, let's talk about the importance of building a team
Yeah.
around you to obviously help you, to achieve your financial goals.
Yeah, look, I think team is very important. And I realized that once I became a banker because I thought, so the reason why rich people and wealthy individuals stay rich and
Mhm.
wealthy is because of their advisors,
Yeah.
right? Some people are good at whatever sport or business or job they do. It doesn't mean they're good at growing the money they make as a consequence.
Yeah.
That's down to the team. That's down to having a good advisor. That's down to having a good accountant, a good banker, a good solicitor, a good lawyer. People that can steer you in the right direction to
Yeah.
make sure that your hard work goes into something that ultimately is preserved. And without it, I don't know how you function. When you're sick, you go and see a doctor.
Mm.
When you've got some money, go see somebody that can give advice and to understand what the options are available to you.
Yeah.
So I think it's super important. I don't think you should want to do it or could do it without that support.
Mm.
It's very important.
And what point do you think should somebody start looking at a team? Is there like certain types of people that you should look for? Like maybe building blocks. Okay, I do this one first,
Yeah.
and then I go to the next, and then
Yeah,
the
well,
next,
look, I mean, I think for sure. I think, again, in the book, I talk about certain life stages that
Mm.
might require different members of that team. So, for example, if you want to buy a house, okay, who are the people you need in your team for that? As a start, if you want to find a good mortgage deal, maybe talk to a broker because mortgage brokers often can find you better
Yeah.
deals than you going directly to the bank yourself, right? So that's a member of the team
Mm.
at that stage. Do you talk to a property buying agent if you're trying to find something bespoke that maybe isn't on the market yet? And they might have some intelligence for a fee, but justified, that can help you get that perfect home that you've been dreaming about.
Yeah.
So those two members of your team. Okay, great. I now have made some money. I've got a massive windfall. I want to know how to invest this tax efficiently. Okay. Do you talk to a financial advisor, a private banker, or an accountant to understand the implications of where to put the money? Okay, great. I now want to know about inheritance tax planning. Okay, again, so at every different stage, and I think again that's how people. So when I say think about income first, this should also be driven by where you are. So don't build a team for the sake of it because you can't afford to have all these people on a retainer, But it's about
For lifestyle.
yeah, well, listen, no. You want to reduce your outgoings, not increase it, right?
Yeah.
But then there may come a point where you reach that level naturally where you think, I kind of need a banker and accountant and solicitor because I'm transactioning constantly. And therefore, these are all my go-tos. There's a lot of people I work with who have their go-tos. Oh, yeah, I'm going to use that person. They've always done my conveyancing. They've always done my accounts. They've always given me advice on this. So you build that team who hopefully you go on a journey with, and they will be the ones that you refer to as and when you're performing various transactions.
Yeah, it's so important. I feel like it is, and especially as you rise up the ladder,
Yeah.
I think that you just get more busier. You may not even have as much time as to manage your money, all these outgoings. You've got a family, you've got other responsibilities.
Yeah.
And if somebody can kind of help you manage that, it just makes sense. It's like a business, right? It's like your self business, right? You're gonna start outsourcing it to other people.
Completely. And what I would say is the easy thing to do when you've got an important life decision is to talk to that family friend who's always done it. And you always there's always somebody, isn't there, in the circle? Oh yes, Uncle Tom, or whatever. Go talk to him or whatever. Rather than always just going for easy referrals, step out your comfort zone and go and talk to a qualified person in whatever discipline that is and say, hey, look, here's my situation. What are you going to charge me in order to have this discussion with me? At least you understand the implications. And if something goes wrong, there's no bad blood in the family that, oh, but they told me to put my money there and it didn't work. And I've heard this so many times where family members have tried to bring other family members in on investments and the investments go bad. And now you can't have Christmas dinners together.
Yeah. Oh.
Right.
Money really makes people go crazy, honestly.
So when people say money doesn't change you, like I said,
no, it definitely does.
It does.
Man. Because if you're becoming a millionaire, there's no way you're not. Not to say that you're gonna become nasty, but you might become a bit more like stressed about it because like, right, I don't want to lose this. You've got up to this level, or spending it or whatever. You kind of
put it this way, right? When you go to a party, a wedding, birthday, and you walk into a room where everyone's eating, and if you see somebody who's got nothing on their plate, you don't even notice them. If you see somebody who's got loads on their plate, you'll be like, whoa, hang on a second. Have you seen that guy's plate? It's noticeable, right? Same thing. When you have a lot of money and you live in a nice house, drive a nice car, you are now noticed. People recognize that you've got some means about you. So what does that do to you? You're now on a defense, like, people are aware my lifestyle is different to theirs. So now, even if the money itself doesn't change you, the position you're in now means that you have to move differently. So I talk to a lot of people who are like, oh yeah, as soon as I make money, I'm moving out the ends. I'm living far from my family and friends. No one's going to know where I live. You know, I'm going to move very different. So whether you like it or not, people are going to see you different, right? Because of the circles you're going to move in. And so that will change your perspective on things.
Yeah, it's crazy. So I haven't spoken about Bitcoin on the channel a lot. Is that on purpose? Probably. But, you know, I thought it would be a good opportunity to speak to you about it. So over the years has seen the rise of Bitcoin, you know, from one Bitcoin, I had to do my research on this, being worth pennies in 2011 to one Bitcoin being worth 52,000, which is, you know, is incredible. I guess, what's your stance on Bitcoin as an investment? And if people do look to invest in it, and again, I want to caution because crypto is probably one of the most riskiest, you know, asset classes out there, right? If people do think that they want to, how much really is a sensible amount to have as part of your portfolio, really?
So look, crypto is an interesting asset. I'm not known widely as a massive promoter of it.
Yeah.
And not because I'm necessarily negative about it, but because I think I have a responsibility to point out the risks. And, you know, because of the way it operates, anyone who doesn't speak in favor of it is against it.
Basically,
Whereas, you know, if it comes to Tesla stocks or Microsoft stocks, if you talk about, I think it's too pricey or this, you're not called a hater. It's just kind of like, oh, that's your view. Whereas with crypto and digital assets, you're either for it or you're FUD.
Yeah.
And you're kind of
Basically
injecting fear and uncertainty into the market. It's difficult to tell people to stay completely away from it on the basis that there have been some major success stories out of crypto. Right? Some people have genuinely made life-changing money sticking by it, you know, and it hasn't even been that long. You know, I know some people just prior to COVID who stuck some thousands in it and made loads of money out of it. Wow. Right? So when you've got those examples walking around, and funny enough, I was at an event a few months back where I met such a person who was like, what do you think of crypto? I was like, oh, I know where this is going. I was like, well, listen, I think it's a volatile asset. It's something that you have to be very cautious about because the volatility of it is like nothing I've ever seen. It's literally like this.
It's crazy.
Right? One news article can send it tumbling. One news article can send it rising. It's just, have you got the tolerance for that first and foremost? Because if you haven't, you can find yourself very uncomfortable if you've got a lot of exposure to it. It's a great thing if you want to have some diversification. Would I recommend that someone puts all their money into crypto? No.
Definitely not. Definitely not. That's a crazy person.
Some people have, though. This is the thing. Some
people have adrenaline, like adrenaline.
But also, you have to remember, if somebody put 30 grand into crypto and now have £600,000 worth of crypto, that now has become the majority. If in this scenario, that's now their majority asset.
That's true. Yeah.
Well, how do you tell them against it? So the question always then becomes: at what point do you de-risk? At what point do you take some money out of crypto to then go and put it into some other assets that hopefully are less volatile? And people always struggle with that timing because the notion is, well, if it's gone from 30 to 600 grand, how much further could it go? And so that greed index kicks in, like, well, it could go to 2 million, it could go to 10. So I might wait till it gets to 5, then I'll pull out. And then it might go back down to 40 grand and think, I should have taken it out. So it's about the timing, of course. But listen, with anything, it's always the time you spend in the market rather than trying to time your in and outs. But if you look at the average hold time for digital currencies, it's kind of less than 100 days.
Okay,
right?
wow.
Which means that people are trading constantly in and out, in and out, in and out. And that tells you a lot about that type of asset. But look, I'm no crypto expert in terms of the underlying movements and what shapes it and what doesn't. What I do know from a banking perspective is it's something that the mainstream banks are not yet advising clients on.
Okay.
Some people are able to access it because there are special funds that have been created to invest in it. And there are some real big financial players who are buying stake in crypto. So it's happening. And I think sometimes those messages get out. People think, well, hang on, all these BlackRock and big financial players are buying a stake. I'm going to buy a stake. But listen, their tolerance and yours are not the same. Do you know what I mean? Your tolerance are not the same. So
they've got money.
They've got money,
deploy,
but
right?
also I just think there's a way to go for us to
Yeah.
really understand where crypto ultimately is going to end up, because I can't imagine it's going to be this volatile forever. There's got to come a point where there will be some regulation that comes in to say, right, crypto is now going to be widely regulated, meaning that it stops the volatility. And we know that it's going to now move pretty similarly to stocks and shares. That we might get to that point. Until then, I would say approach it with caution. If you want to put a few £100 in it to see what it does, sure, why not? Get a taster for it so you know whether to, invest some time understanding it more or not. Like anything, I'm not here to tell anybody what to do with their money. It's just about understanding the risk and rewards.
Yeah. And definitely, I will just caution as well. Don't put your life savings. Don't look at it as a quick flip, because I remember when Bitcoin, not this cycle, the previous cycle, when everybody was talking about Bitcoin. Oh my God, everybody was talking about it.
It was 2020. It was when COVID hit, I think. It was when COVID hit, everyone became a Bitcoin investor.
Exactly. And I know people are like, I'm gonna put my life savings, I'm gonna put all my hard-earned money, nothing, and it's gonna triple, it's gonna be double. It's just the wrong type of mindset to have.
Yeah, I think
with this kind of stuff.
It applies wider than just crypto. I think anybody who's looking for a quick money flip, get rich quick scheme is always exposing themselves for more risk than maybe what they're prepared for.
Yeah. So that takes me on to the question or the point that I made before, where, I've gotten comments before like, so we don't want to be, I don't want to have money, a lot of money when I'm older. I don't want to have it in 30 years. I want it now. Why is it important? What's the importance of obviously, growing your money over time? Why is that important?
Well, look, if we take the moral element out of this, is it possible to grow your money quickly in a short space of time without taking some ridiculous level of risk? No. So the first point is, it's not a viable option for a lot of people. So when you're sitting there saying, I don't want to be rich when I'm 60, I don't want to be rich when I'm 70. Well, okay, don't try and get rich in a year either, because you'll probably lose your money, right? So there is a thing here that maybe we see certain examples that are not realistic of how I went from zero to this in a short space of time. People think, well, how do I get access to that? The truth is, a lot of people who make their money, the majority of people who make their money, make it over a long period of time. There are exceptions that make it in a short space of time, but that is not the norm. So don't think you are the exception by applying long-term rules. I always say, don't play games that's intended to make you rich slowly and try and get rich quickly from it, because you're never going to get the right outcome. So I think it's really understanding that. And, the other day I was in Yorkshire and I met a guy who was 73. Didn't look it. He could have been in his early 50s or even late 40s.
Wow.
Very, in good shape. And he drove a matte black Urus.
Okay.
And I thought, you know what? When I'm 73, I hope I'm still at the top of my game, right? I hope I'm still at the top of my game. And it got me thinking on the way back home. I thought, I bet he wasn't driving a Urus or a Lambo or a Ferrari in his 20s or 30s or even 40s. But clearly, whatever he's done, I was talking to him, real nice guy. I thought, whatever this guy's done, he's sustained it over a period of time. So yeah, I get you don't want to be rich when you're old. You want it now, but can you sustain it? Can you sustain it?
Can you sustain it? There's a question. Can you actually? Because, let's say somebody has a mill right now, right? Over 10 years, that's 100 grand a year. That's good. But I'd imagine somebody with $1 million is probably thinking $1 million lifestyle. Yeah. So that's gone in a year, basically,
exactly
right?
Exactly that. So listen, that for me, honestly, it was a real humbling experience, and maybe an opportune meeting. But I was like, wow, 73, in great shape, here driving a Lamborghini Urus, matte black, as if he's a 30-year-old running around the streets. But I mean, the car didn't matter, but it was just the fact that whatever you're doing, try and sustain it. And if it's not sustainable, then don't rush yourself, right? Make sure that whatever life you want for you and your family is not just for today or the next 5 years, but can you still live this way in 30 years, 40 years? And that's the real question.
I love the fact that you mention that because I've never thought about that. And I think that that's very important because I think a lot of people think, okay, I'm going to get to this goal. Like I said, the 100,000, 200,000, 1 million, whatever it is, right? But you're right. Once you get there, can you sustain it? And it's a genuine question,
No, but listen,
right?
it is, and that's why I always caution this kind of get rich quick thing, because I've said this before, that we are most vulnerable once we get what we want, because in that moment we realize we might need to develop a whole new skill set to exist in that new world we've created for ourselves. You work hard to save a deposit to buy a nice house. Once you've got that house, the bills, the maintenance, all of that stuff, you think, gee, how do I keep this up? You know, you buy a nice sports car and you realize the insurance, the maintenance, the service, and gee, I need to keep this up. You send your kids to private school, you have 3 more kids, and you think, oh, I need to send them all to private school, or maybe I don't. Does that create an issue in the family dynamic? How do you know what I mean? So it's understanding if you can maintain the lifestyle that you're going to create for yourself. That is very important.
Yeah, love that. So, okay, again, talking about your clients, what is like something that they do very, very well when it comes to money that you've noticed?
So I think all the people I work with, what they're very good at is making that money.
Okay.
Facts. Simple. I think what they're very, very good at is whatever activity they did to get him here to begin with, continuing that. So whether it's property, whether it's recruitment, whether it's hospitality, whatever line of work they're in, they're very good at that. So the message to people listening, whatever you do, if you're very good, and it goes back to that scale. If you're at the top because you're great at what you do, the money will come. Yeah. I never have to worry about the expertise or the jobs of the people I work with because they are great at doing that. And that keeps bringing the money in. Yeah. That keeps bringing in that capital event. So focus on what you're doing. You know, the money is a consequence of what you're good at. So what are you good at?
Yeah. Amazing. And what about money management? How important is that? Because obviously I know there's like scales of it, right? There's a few different movements. You've got the frugal movement to building wealth. That's one. Yep. And then you've got the other you've got the balance aspect, which is, you know, do your budgeting, do your money management. Yep. Then I guess you've got the people who don't quite do that, but they're just thinking, I'm just gonna keep on making more money each time, so I don't need to really worry about that. Right? How important is, you know, money management?
It's super important. I mean, I think, you know, as much as I talk about, you know, individuals being great at making money, if you don't manage it, that money isn't going to last. You know, that money will be squandered. So I think managing your money, again, goes right back to the start of our conversation and having discipline, making sure that you're always earning more than what you're spending, making sure that the surplus income that remains is therefore put into good use. I think that starts from whether you earn 10 grand a year or 900 grand a year. It's all about how you manage your money. So even things like your bills, it really puzzles me, right? Because I've been doing this for a very long time, but people pay their bills and have all their income coming from one account. I can never understand that.
I could never do that.
I can't compute that. I'm like, that will send me nuts.
Yeah, no way. I cannot do that. No.
So many people do that. Yeah. So many people are like, oh yeah, everything just kind of washes itself together. I'm like, no. Yeah. You have to at least be disciplined enough to make sure you separate what your bills are, what your commitments are. So there's never that occasion of, I've spent the rent money. That should never happen, because as soon as you get paid, that money has to be separated on the day you're paid. A direct debit system so that you can't forget to do it. Oh, I slipped my mind, I was busy. On payday, there needs to be a direct debit that leaves your account on payday to somewhere else so that when your bills are due, there's never any complications. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Simple things that is money management, right? Looking at things like your credit score. You know, some people think if I earn enough, I can earn my way out of a bad credit score. No, you can't. You can't earn your way out of a bad credit score. It's only your principles of how you behave with borrowed money that can, you know, improve your credit score. So, you know, I remember being in retail when I was at Toys R Us when I was 16. And, you know, this was the early days of understanding money. And a guy came in to buy a PS3 for his son, and it got declined on credit. And he was kicking up a huge fuss in Toys R Us. Like, do you know who I am? Do you know what job I have? What do you mean I've been declined? Check your system again. It must be your system. And I was like, I'm sorry, sir, but the system says you've been declined, right? some people assume that, oh, I earn enough, I should be fine. Well,
Yeah.
listen, if you behave badly with borrowed money, that's going to leave some scars that is very difficult. Even bio-oil can't fix that.
Exactly.
Right? You're going to need a lot of help to kind of undo that. And some people wait till it's too late. Oh, it was a phone bill that I didn't care about, or I moved houses and I couldn't be bothered to do this. And lots of the time, people build up terrible credit scores because of simple things like parking tickets, phone bills.
Yeah.
Not to say that they can't afford to pay it, but they couldn't be bothered, or they didn't open the letter.
Oh,
or,
it's like,
do you know what I mean?
whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
Right,
And now,
yeah.
because of that, your mortgage rate is going to be 3 times what you could get because you have to go to a subprime lender. And that has real implications, because now you could be living on the same road with somebody else, earning the same amount, but your mortgage costs you £500 more every month because of your credit score.
Yeah, it's mad. It's mad. I don't know. Like, I mean, I think I've spoken about my credit score report journey on the podcast, but yeah, I went through that, and I'll never ever go back to that, because you, just like you say, you limit your chances on so many things.
Yeah.
If you want to get your first property, even if you want to get a car, anything that you're looking to
Credit
do,
cards,
right?
overdraft loans.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's so shocking when you see the difference. Like I said, you and I could both apply for the same thing. We might earn the same amount, but because of our credit scores, what I'm offered means that I'm saving money every month, purely on the basis that I don't have to pay as much as you're paying for your debt.
It's crazy.
And that's the
mad
only
when you put
difference.
it like that.
Right? So now I can afford to take extra holidays because I've
Yeah.
got all the surplus income, but you're using all your surplus income to service the same debt we've got.
Yeah, that's wild. Gosh, crazy. Absolutely crazy. Okay, so obviously Labour won the general election, right?
They did.
People don't come for us. We're
But
open space,
You're
authenticity.
stating a fact. Right? There's no bias there.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say this, but I'm not so political, by the way. But I think it's important to talk about it, because it does have that impact on us, and it has an impact on the economy. So what changes, could they make that you think could either positively or negatively impact us?
So I think it's probably timely for us to have a refresh in government. And without, giving away my political persuasions, I think we had been in a bit of a rut for a while, and you couldn't really see ahead in terms of where things were going to end up. I think Labour have been very intent in their messaging, and they were throughout their entire campaign. Reporters would quiz them and press them and push them on policy, give us the detail, and they wouldn't give us the detail. They would just say, we're going to fix this.
Yeah.
And look, they won by a landslide, right? So there's no denying that there was an appetite from the public to have a change in government. I think some of the things that they're talking about, mainly around taxes, I think in the world I operate in, that's where, that's what perks people's ears up, right? Taxes. Whilst they've said they're not going to burden the working people with any more taxes, they are required to raise capital from somewhere. And so there will be a shift in some taxes. It may not necessarily be the working person's taxes, but when we look at things like VAT on private schools, that is something that they're going to do. And so a lot of people I know prior to Labour coming in were trying to forward pay all their private tuition.
Okay.
I mean, this isn't a secret. This was out there.
Wow.
People were forward paying their private tuition to say that, listen, if it means I can pay up front now to save this additional VAT, here's all the money up front so that I don't have to incur this additional tax.
Wow.
So a lot of people were doing that. But yeah, so that's one example. There's talk about, capital gains tax, that potentially moving. And if it does, again, that impacts, those who have assets to sell. I always say that, of all the taxes, capital gains is probably the best one because it means you've made some money.
Yeah.
Right. So you're paying capital gains, you made a profit. So of all the taxes, it's probably the less hurtful one. So I think, those things are probably up for discussion to some capacity. Obviously, talk about the non-dom situation, about, people's domicility and how that impacts them for tax. And even things like carried interest for people who work in financial markets. So fund managers who earn from carry once they've, made an investment that's sort of exited. At the moment, they get charged capital gains tax on that.
Okay.
The proposal was that they might move that to income tax, which is higher than capital gains taxes.
Right.
So I think Labour are going to move the dial on certain things that might mean that, okay, the normal person might not pay more income tax, but capital gains tax, VAT on private school fees, aligning carried interest from CGT to income tax, all those things could impact somebody, right? So, but I think, look, Labour are always known as the party who are looking out for the people. If you look at the rationale behind the VAT on private schools, for example, the argument there is, well, if they can tax those who can afford to take their kids to private school and improve the level of education for everybody else, then it kind of closes the gap a bit in terms of the experience for learners, right?
Yeah, which makes sense, yeah.
You can't argue with that.
Yeah,
right?
can't argue with that, yeah.
Does it mean that if you were a parent who was just on the cusp of being able to afford private schools that you no longer can, how does that make you feel?
Yeah.
The argument there is, well, if normal school levels are raised, then do you need to send your kids to private school?
Yeah.
So look, there's lots of debates that, people are going to have around this topic, but I think we have to wait and see. I think Labour are going to come up with a paper relatively soon. I think maybe sometime after the summer break that starts to set out some of their plans and actions. So it's a bit premature for us to, kind of debate what they're going to do. But like I said, when it comes to taxes, I think they're going to move the dial on certain areas, but we have to wait and see.
Okay, cool. So, your book, The Money Ladder, right? Great book, people. Definitely go and get your copy. Like I said, it's a fantastic book. So I guess what was the inspiration for you writing The Money Ladder?
Look, the inspiration, I think, was the years of interaction and engagement with my audience.
Yeah.
I used to appear on Chucky's podcast. Shout out to Chucky.
Yep. Shout out to Chucky.
Who I think really opened my eyes in terms of the appetite for people wanting to learn and understand this information. Because, before I went on his podcast for the first time in 2018, I just didn't think people cared enough. I mean, I was on social media doing what I was doing, but I didn't realize the hunger and appetite. So years and years of interacting with people on social media and, doing my little quizzes on my page where, sometimes I get a few thousand people answering these quizzes. I thought, how do I transform this information into a place that people can digest at their own time, in their own speed? And the best way to pass on information is a book.
Yeah.
Right. Because what it does is it takes away that herd mentality of thinking, even on this podcast, if someone says, great conversation, that's going to persuade someone else to think it's a great conversation.
It's true, yeah.
Whereas when you're reading a book, it's you and your thoughts digesting that and understanding how you're going to interpret it and apply it. So I think it gives people a safe space to be able to understand everything I've been talking about over the last few years, my 16 years of experience in banking, in a place that people can really pick up and think, okay, where can I identify myself on this journey?
Yeah.
And what do I need to do to get from A to B rather than A to Z? Let's start with A to B and B to C and gradually build up. That's why it's called the money ladder. It's taking it step by step.
Yeah. So what do you think are the key things that you want people to be like their takeaway? I really want to encourage people to get the book. What are the key things that you're hoping that people will take away from the book?
I think the key thing is, firstly, acknowledging that it's called the money ladder because the journey never ends. Okay. Right. There isn't a magic place you get to where you no longer have responsibility for managing your money, right? All the billionaires in the world still work. All the millionaires still work. Everyone is still either maintaining the life they created or trying to create a life that then requires maintenance, right? That's the two camps you're in, right? So I really want people to understand that. Listen, wherever you are on this journey, you're not alone. There are probably lots of people like you figuring out how you make more money, figuring out how you become a millionaire, figuring out how you achieve this kind of goal of being wealthy. So many people, we just don't talk about it enough. But what I want people to take away from this is understanding what are the steps you need to build in order to get there. So focus on income. Like I said, if you're not earning enough where you are right now, what can you do about it?
Yeah.
Right? How do you pivot? How do you add more skills to yourself to be able to give yourself a better chance? Once you start making money, what are the options available to you to start deploying that money in a way that can hopefully grow for you in the future? And then the third step in the book is around the preservation element, understanding what are the best vehicles for me to own the assets that I'm going to buy in the future. Because the truth is, look, without assets, you don't build wealth, right? You can have income can be squandered. If all your money is sat in a bank account, inflation is going to eat away at it. So assets are inevitable. You're going to have to put your money somewhere that grows for you to a point until you need it. It's a very important part. Don't stick all your money into something illiquid that you can never get back out, because otherwise that's not an investment. You've just put your money down the drain. The whole point of investing is it grows for you until a point when you need it. And when you need it, hopefully there's a market for it that you can then trade that asset and get your money back to do whatever you need it to do.
Yeah.
Whether that's to take care of you in later life, whether that's for living costs, whatever it is, helping the children get on the property ladder, paying school fees, whatever it is, that's the whole point of investing. I don't ever want people to think of investing just as this thing that you do without understanding why you're doing it. So in the book, I really explain, why do you invest? Get comfortable with that so you understand, right? It's not just something that I should think about, but it's something I really must do if I really want to go on this journey.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. Franklin, it's been such a great conversation. Look, I could take more hours of your time, but I respect your time. Where can people find you if they want to connect with you?
So very simply, Instagram, Urban Financier. That is my main kind of outlet. Start there. We'll go from there.
Amazing. Like I said, such a great conversation. Really appreciate you sharing, your experience with, in banking, clients, and just giving really down to earth advice. I think that's very, very important because it makes it easier for people to understand where they can kind of get to, and also being realistic. I love realism. That's just what it's about. We like to be as authentic as possible and try to give, as many real messages. I think at the end of the day, right? Like, truth be told, it's all about, defining your goals, but also making sure that, it's not something you're going to get overnight, right? Because again, a lot of people are trying to get overnight. And even when you get there overnight, how do you maintain it? It's very important. I love that you said that, because people don't think of the other end. They think of, okay, I get millionaire. Okay, what happens next? Right?
Yeah.
So really, really appreciate you featuring on the podcast. Do you have any final words for the watchers and listeners?
No, listen, I appreciate you having me. I think, my final kind of words for your listeners is just for them to understand and accept that they are probably in their prime at the moment. They might not think it or feel it because they're not making all the money they want to make, but now is the time you've got the energy to be able to apply yourself, to learn, to, explore, to be inquisitive, to go and find things out. So if you don't make the most of this time now to really build your resources, then it might be too late. So if you haven't got the money now, that's not the issue. Focus on being in your prime and being able to apply yourself to different things, because now's the time to work. The time to relax will come.
Yeah. Appreciate you, Franklin. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the podcast. See you next week's episode.